Years ago, back before kids, you know, when the wife and I were cool people, we did the Lake Michigan Circle on the motorcycle. It was a great time. We did it leisurely style. It took us about 58 hours on the road of actually moving and about 9 days that we were out and about. So we saw a lot of things, stopped and checked things out. A couple of years ago, the big trip out west, maybe you remember that. I got caught up in this iron butt craziness. I got looking at what other kind of iron butts just here to there. They also have a lake circle. It seemed fitting for my second iron butt trip to tackle the big lake. I've already done most of the route before, seen a lot of the stuff along the way, so why not try it iron butt style? To make it true iron butt ride and get certified, there are a couple special rules to follow. First, you need to start and end in the same city, and of course to be iron butt you need to do 1,000 miles in less than 24 hours. Now it's possible to circle the lake in only 800 miles, so you need to tack on a few extra miles somewhere and get receipts along the way. There was a group of iron butt guys that did this together a few years ago, so a lot of the planning I just blatantly stole from them. But I also wanted to make this ride my own, so unlike them, I went clockwise, which allowed me to have a little more control over when I would hit the Chicago sprawl since it was earlier in the itinerary. I also figured I'd be less fatigued for that portion, and that's why I chose to go clockwise around the lake. Also, to add miles, I thought about maybe dipping into the finger of Wisconsin, the Door Peninsula. Those roads are quite a bit slower, and I remember from visiting there earlier, the gas wasn't as readily available as in lots of other places. A lot of businesses closed, kind of on a vacation schedule, so maybe not the best place to be trying to do an iron butt ride where you got to get receipts every so often. I ultimately settled on adding extra miles by heading east into central Illinois. This would allow me to avoid Chicago, and then going straight north from there would get me into the Wisconsin Dells area, and I hadn't been there before, so it was kind of a win-win situation. The legs of the corners would align fairly good with gas stops, so there wouldn't be a lot of extra stopping just to get a receipt. I could stop for gas when I needed to and get a receipt there, and that would document the iron butt pretty well. So the plan was set, a date was chosen, and it was time to set out. Naturally, the night before, I couldn't sleep. So ridiculously early, I was up, and I set out to get a witness and my first receipt. With witness signature, receipt in hand, odometer recorded, the clock officially started. It was time to get going. Apparently my documentation is a bit sloppy here. It's only my second iron butt. I left home at 3:05, but the clock starts when the dated business receipt is marked. So, marked 3:12. Just a few minutes later, I'm moving for real. This being only my second iron butt attempt, I didn't waste any time talking to the camera. It was pretty much just business on the road. But I did get plenty of road footage to share. Through town and past work, then on to the expressway. Now heading down the dark road, traveling familiar places, doesn't make for very compelling riding, nor compelling video. I'm excited to be underway, but boredom here is at a heightened state. These roads are so familiar, it's dark out, and there isn't much to do but settle in and knock down the miles. So let's share some of the particulars of the planning process. A lot of planning went into this. I had a route and the mapping software said it would be about 17 hours for the fastest route, 1,040 miles. Clipping those same points in but selecting shortest route, that would be only 999 miles and 19 hours. I'm tracking the route with my GPS, so hopefully that, along with the odometer readings, is enough to prove to the Iron Butt Association that I went longer than the shortest route, and when I submit, they will accept it. Into the middle of the Indiana section, it was time for a gas stop. The Iron Butt Association highly stresses that speed on the road is not needed to make the 1,000 miles within the time limit, but rather attention to your stops and making gas and go as efficient as possible leads to making good time. Here at 127 miles, it's a bit early for a gas stop as far as just the gas tank is concerned, but it was a nice opportunity to stretch. It was a good quick stop, just 11 minutes gas and go and I was back on the road. The second leg has begun. So far the plan was falling into place perfectly. Here I came into some road construction, but thankfully it was early enough in the morning, traffic was pretty light and there weren't any slowdowns. Even though I'm avoiding the mass traffic of Chicago, the suburb traffic is rather intense even at this hour. Traffic was thick and stressful for a while, but it lightened up quite a bit as the sun was coming up. Now I had the road to myself, but traffic going the other way was quite heavy, a true sign I was putting the city behind me. With calm road, it was time for breakfast. Another trick to the long haul efficiency, being able to eat while underway. This isn't officially advised by the IBA, but it's something I have taken under my wing. The biggest challenge here is opening the package of whatever snack you might have and keeping it in the tank bag without spilling all over. Here, some peanut butter crackers really hit the spot. The Chicagoland traffic had been the biggest question mark in my planning, and now that I was through it, I was feeling pretty good. Some more peanut butter crackers and getting some hydration in, the miles were passing easily, but it looked like there might be some rain ahead. When I left home, my check of the weather radar indicated that I might get wet, but it didn't seem like that could happen until crossing back into Michigan just past halfway of the trip. Here there was a small drizzle, causing that eternal question, do I bother to pull over and suit up? It seemed like it was a very light shower, so I weathered the storm and took my chances. There were a few drops, but I stayed dry and reached the gas station exactly as scheduled. Another good gas and go, only 8 minutes of true stop time here. There is a bit more of downtime if you factor in time spent under cruising speed. At this point, back on the road, my overall average speed was 63 miles an hour. If you divide 1,000 miles by 24 hours, you get an average of 41 miles per hour. So at 63 miles per hour, I had plenty of cushion. Leg 3 had begun and I was excited to head north into an area I've never visited. Although I was excited, I realized I was a bit tired and the sun was coming up. I knew a quick nap was either now or never, so I pulled into a rest area for an Iron Butt hotel. That's Iron Butt speak for sacking out at a rest area on a picnic table for a short nap. Getting a quick nap and being refreshed can do wonders for a ride. The power nap went great and back to the road. My overall average speed dropped to 56 miles per hour with that half-hour rest, but still well ahead of the required 41 miles per hour. Another consideration to be able to knock down the miles is to get an I-Pass so you can do flyby tolling. This was much better than pulling over, worrying about getting rear-ended, fumbling for change, and dealing with the gloves on and off. Just smooth sailing, and the state takes my money away by magic. A little further north I found some more light rain. The traffic picked up. There must have been a car show nearby because there were several cool classic cars along the way. The rain is obscuring the view here, but it was a fun sightseeing along the way. I wonder what that guy in the open cockpit of the Roadster was thinking about the rain and the clouds ahead. With all the classic cars on the road, I felt like I was at a parade, but because I was passing by them instead of them driving past me, it was like a reverse parade. It was pretty cool that these guys drive their cars even in the less than perfect weather. The rain stopped again and I was making good time, setting my speed just slightly faster than most other road users. Before too long, I was off the interstate and onto some smaller state highways in northern Wisconsin, where I'd planned another gas stop to establish another corner of the route with a receipt. This portion going through town wasn't helping my overall miles per hour average, but it was a nice break from the interstate and I knew I had plenty of cushion. Here in Portage, Wisconsin, I found the gas station I had scouted online, and I had planned for a bit more of a rest than just a gas and go. So when the receipt didn't print at the pump, it wasn't a big deal to gear down and go inside to get properly documented. Portage, Wisconsin gas stop, 0857 Central Daylight Time. 405 miles, been on the bike now for 6 hours and 41 minutes elapsed. 52 minutes of that stop. Even though I planned for a slightly longer stop here, I still wasn't dilly-dallying. Just 12 minutes and I was moving again. Riding through town and then this stop had reduced my overall average to 59 miles per hour, still well ahead of the 41 miles an hour needed to complete the feat. This fourth leg of the trip was headed out on back roads, and from the map they looked nice and twisty. There were lots of smiles in the backwoods of northern Wisconsin, and I knew I was headed to US 2 along the north shore of Lake Michigan, which is certain to be a highlight too. The roads were slightly wet, but nothing was coming out of the sky at the moment. Things were feeling great. Around Green Bay, even the smaller state roads were more like interstate with multiple lanes, entrance and exit ramps, and everything like that. Despite being about noon, the clouds were preventing any sun from coming out. It was time to recognize the sunglasses wouldn't be needed. Again, to keep things moving, I pulled a tricky maneuver to remove and store the sunglasses. Not recommended by the IBA, just a little trick I think I perfected. Just north of Green Bay, the clouds looked quite threatening, and finally the rain started to come down in earnest. This aligned with the forecast when I left home, and these clouds looked much darker than those from earlier. Even though I was only a few miles from the next planned gas stop, I took the time to get the suit before I got soaking wet. So here I am suiting up at 11:44 Central Daylight Time, 566 miles, 9 hours 30 minutes elapsed, 1 hour 5 minutes stopped. Getting the suit on wasn't a world record or anything, but suiting up went pretty well, and I was back on the road to my planned gas stop only 11 miles further. I'm glad I stopped before that 11 miles because there was a full typhoon on the road before getting to the gas station. At this gas station, I recognized I was just past halfway now. This gas and go was only 8 minutes stopped. I was getting into a good rhythm with these, even though this recent one, the rain had added a small element of difficulty, making the documentation hard to do and keep dry. Yes, I was under the awning of the gas pumps, but the suit was dripping and there were extra layers to get into the tank bag now. Back on the road and crossing into Michigan, I was finally close enough to get a glimpse of the lake. It's kind of funny to think that this trip is so much different from our leisurely trip around the lake. On that trip, we had taken a full week, and we hardly ever got out of sight of the lake for more than a few miles. Here I had been underway for several hours and hadn't even seen the water. I saw a spur road on the GPS and took the opportunity to get closer to the lake. It seems strange that this lakefront property is a bit run down. In southwest Michigan, lakefront property like this would attract a pretty penny, and consequently McMansions with hoity-toity landscaping and lawn services to go with the estate. Here, trailer parks and crushed concrete for a beach was quite a different experience. After that quick sightseeing detour, I was headed back to the state road. Wouldn't you know it, I was just in time to fall behind 3 semi-trucks. This shouldn't be a big deal, it was double lanes both ways, but just a mile down the road, it was back to a country byway, 1 lane each way. Thankfully, every so often, this 2-lane highway added an extra lane specifically for passing, and there were signs telling you how far until the next one. But even coming to those, I was surprised at the speed these trucks were carrying. Then I remembered just recently they changed the law in Michigan, and this road, which had been 55 miles an hour, was now a 65 mile an hour speed limit. That just helped my average miles per hour. This part of US 2 is just awesome. There are several parts where you're within 100 feet of the lake and some great views. It was time to heed nature's call, and there was a cool rest area to visit. I met a guy in a Goldwing with a pop-up trailer and a dog who was headed the other way. He said the rain had just started, so it was time for him to get off the road and call it a day. That was exciting for me because it meant I would be heading out of the rain soon. This guy was from New York. I almost got sucked into a long discussion. It can be a tricky balance. I like meeting people on the road, but I'm also traveling against the clock. Continuing on US 2, there were plenty of great views living up to what I remember as an awesome road. With all the great sights from the road, it's easy to lose track of your speedometer. Now, with the speed limit being 65, it wasn't so much of a challenge to keep the speed in check. Getting to the end of my date with US 2 and almost ready to cross the bridge back into the lower peninsula, the rain went away, but a thick fog set in. Usually there's a good view of the bridge from this little rest area. I was hoping to get a picture of the bike with the bridge in the background, but today there wasn't anything but a view of a thick cloud, so just a flyby on the rest area. Just before crossing the bridge, it was time for another gas stop. Gas stop in St. Ignace, 1705, 781 miles down, 13 hours 51 elapsed, 1 hour 42 stopped. Here I wasn't looking to gas and go, but still didn't spend a lot of time either. It was a restful gas stop where I dried out a bit, grabbed some jerky for dinner, and headed on to another highlight of the route. Here it's time to pay toll, and you have to do that old school. I have to stop, get out money, and I wanted a receipt to help log the iron butt, even though it's only a few miles from my last gas stop and my previous receipt. After paying, I pulled over to the side to properly store the receipt, get the wallet and the change back in order before heading over the mighty Mac. Crossing the Mackinac Bridge is always a treat. Thankfully, every time I've done it on the bike, it has been very good weather. But even without wind, it can be a little daunting. I always say I'm going to stay in the slow lane on the right, which is full concrete the whole way, but inevitably there's either construction or I just can't stand going that slow, so you move over to the center lane and onto the grate. If you look down, you know you are 200 feet over the water, and on the grating it seems like you are hovering in mid-air. Back into the Lower Peninsula, it was like I was practically home. There was still a significant distance to go, but it seemed very little compared to what I'd been through already. The speed limit law change had affected this portion of I-75, and it is now 75 miles an hour instead of just 70 miles an hour. I tell myself that I'll only do my typical push the limit as if it were still 70 miles per hour, which means I feel comfortable going about 78. But getting past just once, my resolve is broken and I settle into a faster pace. It's been quite a while since I've been actively rained on, and the roads are getting drier and drier. It's time for nature's call again, and instead of dealing with working around the suit, I take the opportunity to get the suit off and take a rest break. A successful stop, some bladder relief, and I was back on the road. After I decided to take the suit off, I checked the weather, and maybe that wasn't the greatest decision. Suit's already off, I'm going to live with it. There's only a couple hours left, so how bad can it be? There are a few light raindrops as I take some back roads between interstates, like here, heading through Lake City, but no rain worthy of the suit. It's nice to be out of that sweat bag. My second to last gas stop before finishing where I started is a familiar exit. Growing up, my family would often come camping nearby, so I have plenty of memories of this area. Even though I'm just passing through, not even grabbing a snack, it's nice to visit. Reed City Gas Stop. 2009, 955 miles, 16 hours 54 elapsed, 2 hours 13 minutes stopped. So as I mentioned before, the Iron Butt rules for the Lake Circle say you have to start and stop in the same city. I'm taking that a bit further and planning on using the same gas station. There's about 100 miles left, which should take me an hour and a half. It's easy to think that the ride is already completed, but at the same time, with dusk setting in and lots of time spent awake and aware, this needs to be an extra alert time. The thought of finishing and accomplishing my second Iron Butt is starting to get me a little emotional under the helmet. The sun is setting and casting a nice golden hue, making for a pleasant ride. There's another small shower, but again, not worthy of the rain suit. Looks like my decision to ditch the suit won out after all. The last exit, only a few more miles to go. I pull into the last gas stop with plenty of time to spare. I got gas, print the receipt to stop the clock, and then go get some witness signatures. Again, I'm amazed at how willing some of these people are to offer their phone number and vouch for me, but maybe I shouldn't be too surprised. I mean, hey, I'm one handsome fella. So last gas at 21:32, that's 9:32, 1,041 miles, exactly as planned. Got all of my paperwork done. I had the last few miles home, getting ready for a huge celebration. Or I find that nobody really cares, other than being glad I'm home safe. It's always a strange feeling re-entering the so-called civilian world after spending so much time cooped up in my helmet. I review the stats and enjoy a drink before getting to bed feeling accomplished. Having not ridden much this year, I'm surprised at how not sore I am. The next day would prove to be different. I submit my paperwork and wait patiently. About a month later, I get a notice that it has been accepted, and a week after that, receive my certificate and pin.